Let's discuss the 10 common grammatical mistakes that we see throughout our careers. The first one that we encounter is the subject-verb agreement. And what this means is that if you have a plural subject, you want to match it to a plural verb. And if you have a singular subject, you want to match that to a singular verb. So what do you not want to do? The first example we can look at is the student was on time or the student were on time. This is what you do not want to do. But we can fix this. And how can we fix this? Let's look at what we can do. An example of what we should do is the student was on time or the students were on time. I am matching the singular subject to the singular verb and the plural subject to the plural verb. And the one thing you want to be careful with when you do this is that when you have a plural subject and you have a plural verb, sometimes they're separated in a sentence. So you want to make sure, first thing that you do is that you find the subject and you find the verb and make sure they match. Next, let's discuss a comma in a compound sentence. To do this, let's define a compound sentence. A compound sentence is two or more independent clauses. Next, let's define what an independent clause is. An independent clause has a subject, a predicate, and it can stand by itself. So when we use a comma or place the comma in a compound sentence, you want to place the comma before the coordinating conjunction. What does this look like? First of all, you have the independent clause, then you have your comma, your coordinating conjunction, then you have the next independent clause. An example of this would be, I think I will eat the salad, or I will share the pizza. In this instance, we have an independent clause, a comma, your coordinating conjunction, which is or, and your other independent clause, which is I will share the pizza. So remember, independent clause, comma, coordinating conjunction, and then your independent clause again. A run-on sentence is something you do not want to do, and a run-on sentence are two sentences that are combined into one sentence. An example of this would be, I love to play basketball. I would play basketball every day if I could. This is an example of a run-on sentence. Next we have comma splicing, which is something you also want to avoid doing. It is two independent clauses that are combined with a comma. An example would be, I love to play basketball, comma, I would play basketball every day if I could. All I'm doing is separating my two independent clauses with a comma. How can we fix this? So, what can you do? You can use a dash, a semicolon, a colon. You can separate them using a coordinating conjunction, or you can separate them into two separate sentences. These are different ways that you can eliminate a run-on sentence or your comma splice. Next, let's discuss the pronoun case. There are three different types. You have subjective, objective, and possessive. There are different types of subjective, objective, and possessive pronouns. First, you have the subjective pronouns. And these are I, you, he, she, it, we, they, who. These are your subjective pronouns. Next, you have your objective pronouns. And these are me, you, him, her, it, us, them, and whom. These are your objective pronouns. Next, we have the possessive pronouns. And the possessive pronouns are as follows. My, mine, your, yours, his, her, hers, it, its, our, ours, their, theirs, and whose. These are your possessive pronouns. And there are a couple things that you want to keep in mind. For example, if you're using a possessive noun, make sure you use the correct possessive noun. For example, if I said, the books belong to Kelly, Kelly is a she. So I would say, the books belong to her. I wouldn't say the books belong to him. So make sure you're using the correct possessive noun. One thing you want to also keep in mind is to split them up. What does this mean? Well, first of all, if I was to want to decide between me and I in a sentence, I could say Kelly and me went to the store, and I would split Kelly and me up. I'd say me went to the store. Is that right? No. So I'd say Kelly and I went to the store. I went to the store is correct. So make sure you split them up. If you ever have any issues when you're using multiple pronouns, split them up, try them out. Next, let's discuss the possessive pronoun. There's two things that you want to keep in mind. The first one are your pronouns versus your possessive forms. For example, you have I versus my or mine, or we versus our or ours. You want to make sure when you're using a possessive form that you actually use a possessive form, such as my or mine instead of I. Next, we have the contractions versus the possessive pronoun. You want to make sure that you're using the correct possessive pronoun and not the contraction. For example, you have its versus its, their versus their, whose versus whose, and your versus your. You want to make sure you're using the correct one, because if you use something as its, it, comma, s, that means it is. Whereas its, its, it means it belongs to it. And then you have their, which is they are, where you want to say their, so their books, their school, versus they are going to the store, or they are going to get their book. So you really want to be careful with your contractions versus possessive pronouns. Next, let's discuss the comma in a series. When you use a comma, use it to separate 3 or more words or phrases. An example of this would be, I bought cake mix, butter, and eggs. You would split them up using the commas. Next, let's discuss unclear or vague pronoun references. You always want to make sure you're clear with your pronouns. But if I was to say, I want to turn it in, what is it? You would say, I want to turn in the 7-2 paper. Or you could say the employer and employee knew that he stole. Who stole? So you want to fix that by saying the employer and employee knew that Steve stole. Using pronouns is great, but you want to make sure that you're always clear and concise. If someone doesn't know what it is, you want to clarify by saying it is the 7-2 paper. Next, you talk about the employer and employee. Who stole? Did the employer steal? Did the employee steal? Did someone else steal? All you know is that he stole. Who specifically stole? So you want to specify that Steve stole. So the more specific you are, the better off you'll be. Let's discuss sentence fragments. Sentence fragments are incomplete sentences. For example, if I said, because she went to the store, this would be an incomplete sentence. I would want to write, she did not watch her favorite TV show because she went to the store. This would be a complete sentence. I have my independent clause and my dependent clause. And the one thing you want to realize is that she went to the store. It is an independent clause, but because I have because before it, it becomes a dependent clause and can't stand by itself and becomes a sentence fragment. So make sure you're completing your sentences. Next, let's discuss misplaced modifiers. Misplaced modifiers are words that modify the wrong word. An example would be, she served water to the people in glasses. You'd fix this by saying, she served the people water in glasses. The reason the first sentence is incorrect is because the server is serving water to people who are in glasses. The people are in the glasses, which is not what was meant to be said. Instead, you want to say she served the people water in glasses, because the water is what is in the glasses. So you want to make sure that you're modifying the correct words. Lastly, let's discuss prepositions at the end of a sentence. It is best if you do not use a preposition at the end of a sentence. It is better not to do it. Some examples of prepositions are about, as, at, by, but, towards, and with. These are some of the many examples of prepositions that you want to try to avoid using at the end of a sentence.